Hey everybody, Steve Burns here, and we are ready to add our fire and smoke, or a smoke brush, to our scene. I'm going to add it right beneath my building, but above my texture. And as you can see here, I've added a new layer just below the building. That's where we're going to place our smoke in. I'm going to hit the D key on my keyboard to make the default black and white smoke. You can see I have my foreground and background colors are still there. Let's go find those. There they are. I'm just going to go turn that off temporarily. And we're going to go back down to our layer. Now, let's go ahead and start adding some smoke, some black smoke. Now, I'm using a walking pen, so I'm using pressure sensitivity. So if you're using a brush, you can, or a mouse, I should say, with your brush, bring down your opacity down to 10 or 20%. So I'm going to just gently start to add a little bit of smoke coming off the top here, okay? And it's going off into the distance. Now I'll make it small down here and just a little bit. Now I'm going to hit the X key, add a little bit of the steam coming through. Okay, here we are, coming out of the background. Hit the X key again, add a little more black coming off. Now I want to add some lighting down through here, which is going to represent my fire. I'm going to add a little more black. There we go. A little more white, a little more steaminess coming off to the other side. As it gets higher, remember, it's going to dissipate and get a little larger. All right. So let's go hit my Alt key to grab the foreground color. Let's go target the background. Let's go get something a little more of a reddish color. And what we're going to do is I'm going to add a new layer above this. And this layer is going to be set to normal mode. I'm going to keep it in normal. And I'm going to set my blend mode for my brush to overlay. Okay. Now I'm going to start with some orange color. I'll start with that in the bottom, and I'm going to gently tap up. There we go. Get a little bit of and I'm going to kind of paint in the orange effect right in here, not too much. Hit the X key, and I'm going to bring in those highlights coming through. Okay, there we are, coming out of the building. Now we're probably going to want to add some of that to the sides of this here, making this a little larger. There we are. Okay. All right, so with that layer, we can bring down opacity, right? Okay, we can bring down opacity with the fire coming through the top. We're going to add one more layer above the building. I'm going to put it to the very, very top, because that's going to be the fire coming, or the smoke coming outside of the building. So I'm going to hit the D key, and I'm going to add a little bit of that smoke coming off the side on both sides. So a little bit of the black coming off the edges around the sides of the building. Hit the X key, maybe a little bit of steam as well coming out of there. Okay, so just play around with this. Okay, and don't forget we have opacity adjustments for that as well. Okay, it's not looking too bad. Now let's go over to the other side right in here. Let's go back down. All right, let's go back down to our layer that we created our fire in initially. There we are. In fact, let's do a separate one for that. I always like to organize things a little bit separately. And let's go ahead and start with a little bit of the smoke in here. And let's go ahead and start with the little bit of the white steam. I'm going to bring the brush a little bigger. There we are. Make it a little larger as it comes up and out. Then I'm going to hit the X key, make a little bit of go even larger as I get further to the top. Okay. And I don't want to completely distort this. I want to continue to see some of the texture behind it, which I distort this a little too much. I can go back and correct that a little bit later. Okay, now let's go and add some of the fire to it. So I'm gonna go give that a new layer. Let's go sample some of that brighter color, go to the background color, and probably get something more of a pure yellow. There we are. Okay, let's come in over here and let's start to play. I'm going to make sure that my brush is also still an overlay. Add a little bit of that. There we go, just a little bit. Now I don't want to bring that all the way up. I want to keep that lighting down here, so you can see it's starting to light the scene a little better as well. Let's bring this brush down a little smaller, and if we go to the corner here, we can see we're starting to light a little bit of the sides, which I like. So I'm going to make sure I include a little bit there. There we go. Just a little up, a little bit more. Hit the X key, and let's give it a little more of that warmer yellow coming through from the very bottom. Just highlight that just a little bit there. Hit the D key for black. Probably pull it up just a little bit. Hit the X key. Give it a little more highlights. Okay. And bring it on up. Okay. So the whole layer is currently an overlay. If I want more of a solid smoke coming out of there, make a new layer. Keep it in a normal blend mode. And we can get more of that solid smoke coming through. It starts to obscure things. Hit the X key, maybe add a little bit of the white coming through there, make it a little larger as it starts to move away from the building. So just play around with this one. So if we go back to the other, we're going to pull it down and turn that off and on. You can see where the black smoke is kind of really obscuring a lot of that texture. And I might want to take some of that away. So hitting the E key, I'm just going to go back and get that brush, that particular brush that I created, my smoke brush. And I'm going to just paint away. There we go. So I might want to bring down my opacity a little bit because the brush this particular brush may be a little bit too sensitive. So even with the walking pen, I'm bringing, there we go, taking it away. Take it a little bit more way up in here so we can see some of the stuff in the background. And we may not necessarily see that in the background if it's going to be a real strong smoke effect. So go back to my brush, hit the X key to make sure I'm painting with black. And of course I can always bring things back in. So now we can now our focus is going to be on this foreground building in relationship to all the buildings around it. Okay, so let's turn that on and off. Select that layer. And let's see what happens if we actually give this layer a blend mode. I always like to play around like that. And if I do so, let's go ahead and alt click on this and just get some of that pure orangish yellow and give that little red for the background. And let's see what happens if we start to add see now we get the lighting in there. Okay, I'm gonna bring this down, bring this up to the sides a little bit, get a little lighting coming off in the background. You can see the texture inside. It's kind of nice. All right, so, and that's going to be the same effect we can get for the other one, which I think let's actually pull that up a little bit. Go find the layer that one is in, the one to the left. There we go. Okay, select it. Now that layer is in normal blend mode. Let's put one right on top, change the blend mode to overlay, so we can affect the lighting overall as opposed to adding density to this color. And we start seeing, now you can see the sides of it is starting to highlight yellow. I'm going to bring this down smaller so I can highlight these sides to take on the lighting coming from the fire. And it's going to definitely show right through here. Okay, so you want to keep those things in mind. So the lighting's really important. So I guess the only other thing I can think of, just in terms of a quick tutorial here, and it's not a lot of time for me to complete it, but this gives you all the skill sets that you need to complete your homework assignments. and that is adding a little bit of burnt type of a feeling to the outside of the building. Got the fire coming out. What about some of the burnt effect on the outside? So I'm gonna right click here. I'm gonna take a look at some brushes now. I got a variety of brushes here, and there was some that I created from various textures. So I'm gonna go take a look at this, and I'm looking at this one right here. That's an interesting little brush. Let's bring that, make it smaller. Oops. Let's take that off. And resizing the brush. And let's go and give it a color that's going to represent that type of the very brownish, darkest brownish look of it. I don't know, of staining the outside walls of the skyscraper. So I'm going to come over here, hold my Option key down, and grab a brown layer, something right off of here. And we're going to put this on a new layer right above the building. So here's my building. Select the building, and I'm going to make a new layer right above it and make this a clipping path to the building. So I'm going to bring the brush a little smaller. I'm going to also just tap into here to put this down. Now if I change the blend mode to multiply, there, okay, now we're starting to get our grungy effect. So the color of that brown is probably a little bit too light for my taste. So I'm going to come right over here and bring the density down. So that brown is fine, but just bring the density down just a little bit. And if I start to tap on things, okay, now we're starting to add the grunge effect. So I'm going to bring the brush down a little smaller. There we go. And just, you know, I'm just tapping in to kind of place that texture where I think this is going to be effective. Okay, so pulling it out. Go ahead and tap this. So the smoke is also staining the outside of the building, starting to give it a sense of realism there. Let's go down to the bottom, bring it, add a little more of this. Resize that brush so it's not looking repetitive in the least. Okay, so we don't want it looking a little repetitive. Let's go to the top. The smoke is rising, so it's probably going to be more stained up here than everything everywhere else. Okay, let's go to the top of this. There. Okay, then you have your opacity layer. You can adjust it accordingly to make the stain to your liking. And it's not looking bad. Now we're comparing it to the rest of our buildings. In fact, let's look at the layer that we're in, which is called Building 1. Turn it before and after. See, we did all this inside that layer group. It's going to help organize things. And I'm going to add one little thing, and that is one more new layer to add a shadow underneath here. So I'm going to go to my lasso tool, and I'm looking at how the shadow should follow. And I'm going to go and grab that polygonal lasso tool so I can get a straight edge. And I'm going to follow that perspective, which an initial shadow was already established. And I'm going to bring it in behind, right about there. Okay, and let's go hit the D key and fill that with black. So as you can see, it's pretty much, it needs to be underneath all the layers, right? So let's go drag this beneath all of the other buildings, but on top of the sky. And we need to put it above the streets, right? So right there. There. Okay. Okay, there's my shadow. Bring down the opacity of the shadow a bit. Okay. Give the shadow probably a little bit of a blur. So filter blur, Gaussian blur. So, you know, blur it to your liking. Okay, there we are. Okay, so that should give you a little sense of how to go about creating your post-apocalyptic style building. So look at your homework assignment, follow the instructions on there. 5 things for you to accomplish. So put a lot of creativity into this one. So I'm excited to see everybody's homework. I think last week's homework was well done. I think everybody did a great job. I think most everybody received A's on that one, with the exception of those who didn't really complete the assignment. So don't wait to the last minute to do this, to complete the assignment. And I was just looking at this image here, and think about how lighting is going to affect other buildings. Now look at the building right here to the left. I'm going to get in a little closer to the left of this. So a shadow from the building in the front is actually going to be falling on that. So keep stuff like that in mind. Let's find out what building that is. And I'm going to click on it, and it looks like it's inside of building 3. That is it. So put a layer on top of that. I believe what we'll do is, that's the building 3, make a layer on top of that, and I'm going to create, just use my rectangular marquee, and I'm going to assume the shadow is going to fall right about this far. Fill that with black, okay? And I'm going to make that a clipping path to that group there, okay? So only that group's deselected, only that group's being affected. Now I may need to mask out a little bit, but we'll see in just a little bit. So filter menu, blur. Let's go ahead to Gaussian blur. Get that little softer edge, okay? So you get to see how depth is established if we pay attention to details. Bring this down. Also, remember the black layer? Give that a blend mode of multiply. Okay, so we can get some of the natural colors to come through, and pull it down a little bit, like so. Now if we pull it back, we get to see, now we're starting to get a real strong sense of depth. Okay, so think about how lighting, even on this, on the building back here, there should be a shadow falling as a result of the building in front of it. Okay. Okay, so have fun with this. Put as much detail in here as you can. Break up the street scenes with crackled texture. All right, because in the post-apocalyptic day, the scenes are not being the streets are not being maintenance, so that's going to start to degrade and break up and crack and so forth. So break up your streams, your streets. Maybe break some of the light posts in here and have one of them laying on the ground. Remember, shadows for everything. So if you establish your lighting, pay attention to your shadows. And if we want to really kind of solidify the color in all this, let's go over here and make a new layer right on top. And we can do a couple of things. Now, one of them is I can try an adjustment layer. I'm going to go add my hue and saturation. Tell it to unify it with a single color. Go to colorize, and then decide what color that I want. Okay. So maybe I want like a sepia type of a color. That's the saturation. Let's go to the colorize, go to the top, and decide what color we want. More of a sepia, and then bring down, okay, which I prefer not to use this particular technique for unifying some of the color. Let's go ahead and delete this layer. Instead, what I enjoy is filling it with a particular color. So for example, I'm going to grab, let's do a gradient. I'm going to grab the blue from the sky, go to the foreground, grab the blue from the sky, and on the background, let's grab some of this, let's grab maybe this brownish reddish. I'm going to give it a little more of a color to it, something like so. All right, I'm going to hit the G key for the gradient. In the gradient, I'm going to make sure it's going from gradiating from my foreground color to my background color. Go to my shift key and let's drag it down and apply that gradient to my scene. I'm going to add a blend mode. Now I'm going to play around with the various types. Now there's my multiply. I don't think this is going to work very well. The lighten. I'm playing around, and let's try to overlay. Overlay works pretty good. And if we go to soft light and to hard light, we go down to linear light. Linear light's not bad, especially if we bring down the layer opacity here. It starts to unify the color a little bit. But I'm thinking that overlay might work even better. So you have techniques like that. Now I can hit Command U, which is going to be my hue and saturation, and I can alter these colors on there. So if I decide I want to try something else and see what's happening, try something else and see what it gives you. Use your imagination. Okay, maybe something closer to that. Okay. All right, so a little before and after, and before and after. So let's turn it off temporarily, and I'll give you another little tip here. So let's put one more layer above here, and we can add. Say I want to add a little more lighting effects coming across here. I might as well use the same brush. So I'm going to make sure that layer itself is going to be in the blend mode. I'm going to go to overlay again. Okay. Make sure my B key is selected for the brush. And I'm going to go back to that smoke brush that I had right down there. Okay. And let's go ahead and paint with more of a brighter color here. So let's see what this gives me. So if I kind of give it a little hit, add a little highlights across here. There we go. To kind of brighten that up a little bit. And if you add one more layer and change that one to color Dodge, you can really affect it. Like really make it bright. Bring it across in there. Okay. Really add to your fire. So play around with this. Don't be afraid to add a little bit of motion blur to it to give direction to the smoke and fire. And once again, have fun with this project. Don't wait till the last minute. I'm looking so forward to seeing all of your work. And so far, so good. Everybody's doing a great job.